Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Dragons Dogma 2. Today we're talking about Endgame though, because yeah, DD2 actually has one, though it's got quite a mixed response from the community. If you're unaware, well, there's multiple endings to the game. One of them is considered the true ending. It features a unique endgame that lasts for a limited amount of time in-game, and within that endgame, called the Unmoored world, you can purchase, say, the best equipment, from armor to weapons. You can successfully save or fail to save vital characters, and you can face completely unique monsters found nowhere else. But on the flip side, saves are going to be much more limited in there, increasing the pressure during that time limit. And interestingly, there's been a lot of discussion around the topic and how a surprising amount of people claim to be getting absolutely destroyed in there. Maybe they go there too early, maybe they're just not prepared enough. There's an expectation on your level, your gear, and most importantly, what you did before you went into this endgame. So with that in mind, I put together this guide of what to know, what to do before you actually enter the Unmoored world, and of course, what you actually need to do to trigger the true ending. Naturally, this is going to be spoiler heavy in the lead up to the Unmoored world, but I will not be covering the world itself, just everything leading up to it. Now we've covered the concept and warned you about the topic though, let's get started. So how do you actually reach the Unmoored world and the true ending? In short, you need to progress the main story, and the kind of turning point for the whole thing is this quest, A New Godsway, where you need to hand in 15 Wyrmslife crystals from the Drakes and Dragons to help power up the Godsbane blade to take it from dull to functional. From there, you push the main story to its completion, which is not too far beyond that, and as you likely imagined, you need to face the dragon that started this all, the same one that turned you into the Arisen. There are multiple ways to choose to take on that challenge, one of which has you fight it directly in an all-out battle. But our true ending requires something unexpected. You choose to fight the dragon at the end, and during the flight to the battle location, you climb your way to the dragon's chest, to its heart, and then instead of stabbing the dragon heart, you stab your own through the use of the Godsbane blade. In that moment, you just open your inventory, you go to use the sword, and then you can choose to use it on yourself. This is actually all that's required to enter the Unmoored world and kick off that endgame section, but it's what you do before this event that's so vital and what this video is all about. Let's start with the extremely important things to do, and the first thing is to do with these port crystals here. You want to have one of these port crystals set up in every major town, and most importantly, the outskirts towns. Obviously, it means that you can use fairy stones to teleport to any of these locations. The reason this is so important in the true endgame section is because you're on a time limit to save as many people as you can to defeat the main enemies. The most important town to have a port crystal set up then is definitely the Sacred Arbor, aka the Elf Village, all the way at the northern point of the map here. It's the furthest point from any of the major events that are going to happen, mostly around the Seafloor Shrine, and the second most important location is definitely the Volcanic Island camp, so that you have access to the Volcano Island pretty quickly. Obviously, the other two that matter are going to be Back Batal, where we have a portable setup just generally, and then of course Vernworth, but this one actually has a permanent port crystal. As you go into the Unmoored world, you'll find that different towns actually start to have these permanent port crystals. You do need to go to them to activate them, which isn't helpful when you need to get there in the first place. So as stated, the endgame has a time limit. As time passes, the world shrinks, and a cloud covers the map more and more, essentially deleting that section of the world. As you begin, Melv is pretty much the first target, as is that whole section of the map. Your task is to try to help everyone evacuate in time while defeating some of the major monsters as you go. And if you have to walk your way to every main location through the harsh terrain, the extra deadly fights, it's just more unlikely you'll actually manage it. Ox carts are not an option in that messed up world, as you might have guessed. So having a port crystal set up in each main town before you go to the Unmoored world makes things significantly easier. Next, in terms of extreme importance to be aware of before you go into the Unmoored world, is how you're actually evacuating the towns. You need to convince them to give up their home, especially in the elves case, that's going to be a really big ask. But if you've built up trust and respect before those events, they'll know you're telling the truth, and because of that, you're going to have a much easier time actually saving them. Technically, you can still convince them despite all that, but when you're on a time limit, this seems to be a pain point for the people actually struggling to evacuate everyone in time. So what is it you need to do to earn their trust before you go into the endgame? Well, you need to do the elf side story stuff. It starts with helping the son of the leader of the elves actually learn archery, quickly turning into saving his daughter, and then the storyline with the daughter is to restore the Arbor Tree itself, the elf's main hub, back to life. As an ultra fast guide to this, you meet this elf in Vernworth, right in front of the weapon store. He just needs a human bow. Buy one or find one and give it to him. Then you swap to an archer vocation and go teach him how to shoot a target at the marked location that he meets you at. From there, you meet him again in Vernworth to say, hey, come and see me do the archery trials. You meet him and he takes you to the elf village, only to find out that the daughter of the village elder has been kidnapped by an ogre. That's in a nearby cave. We defeat the ogre, we save the daughter, and everyone's really pleased. Now, upon speaking with the daughter in the actual town, she'll let you know that the Arbor Heart is fading. As she tells it, a dwarf came to town and gave some of this resource they'd never seen before, and it ended up healing the tree. Dwarves and elves generally hate each other, so this is a bit of an ask, but you need to find a dwarf that knows what this Gwenfenture actually is, and to get some. If you come to Back Batal, this is where you're going to be able to do that. Down to the southwest, you have this unique smithy, where you can speak with a girl rather than the dwarf to talk about the issue. She lets you know that dwarves are not going to work with an elf or help them, but there is this particular elf dish that they absolutely love that they're too abashed to ask for. So you go back to the elf village, you talk to the daughter again, and she agrees to make this horrible meal for the dwarf. What it is rotten fish and rotten fruit. You can just run around by any water and grab some fish, and in the woodlands region, finding apples is not too hard, just picking them from bushes. There is a merchant to sell fish in Harv, which is a fishing village, and you could go to the Border Watch outpost to buy some apples there instead. Now they're in your inventory, you just need to pass time, like sit at a bench or sleep or whatever, and then the fish and the apple will turn into like aged or ripe and eventually rotten. Then you can give that to the daughter of the leader of the elf village. She'll cook it for you, you take it to the dwarf, he goes off and eats this horrible thing, and then you get to loot the cave that has this resource that you need in it. After that, we can just return to the elf village and see what's going on with the tree. We can see that it's now sprouting new buds, and with that, you have kind of saved Arbor Heart. Now the elves are going to trust you and appreciate you a lot more, which leaves you prepared when you actually go into the true endgame. Now, having said all that, I would still suggest that you have one more thing prepared as you're going into the endgame. What I mean by that is having one pawn in your team that can speak Elvish. Whether that's a temporary pawn or your main pawn. If you want to make it easy and have it be your main pawn, then you can speak with the elf innkeeper in Arbor Heart, and if you give them bundles of flowers, that'll increase your reputation with them. At a certain point, she'll really appreciate you and give you a specialization reward. If you consume this item, your pawn will then take on the specialization to speak Elvish, and everything will be automatically translated for you. That could make the process of convincing people to actually leave in the Unmoored world a lot easier, rather than struggling with just runes that you don't understand. Okay, so with the really important stuff explained, now it's just kind of personal preference when you're going to go in. Obviously, I would recommend you delay doing any of this until you're ready to literally end your playthrough, because as soon as you start the Unmoored world, that's kind of the end of the game. You either succeed in the Unmoored world or you fail, but at the end of it, you're going into New Game Plus. So before you trigger that event, make sure you're satisfied with what you've done in this game. If there's any side quests, any characters you want to work on, any general exploration, it's strongly recommend you do that first. This is where I'll obviously reference vocations. Whatever you want to level up before you go in there, it's definitely worth it. Obviously, you can unlock all these augments, and that can be, a perfect setup for whatever build you're doing. For me, I'm just working on Warfare right now, just to pick up Zeal. It reduces the stamina consumed when performing a weapon skill, which is just fantastic for any vocation, but is something I really want for my thief. But if there's anything you're not sure about, you can just go to the Change Vocation tab in a vocation guild and see all of their augments and how far down the list it actually is. For example, with the mage, its maximum one is Exaltation, which increases your stamina recovery speed, fantastic for every vocation. If you want to min-max and be as strong as possible before going into the Unmoored world, this is something that you should be considering. On that note, also, the master teachings are worth thinking about. These are the various ultimate skills that you learn that are absolutely busted for pretty much every vocation. Once you go into the Unmoored world, you're not going to be able to wander around speaking with people and gaining their faith and doing their side quests. You'll have missed your opportunity. So make sure you've got all of these unlocked before you push into the true endgame. Even if you're not going to use it for, say, X vocation, maybe your main pawn will. We have a whole guide for the teachings and how to unlock them all on the channel right now. The other thing that I would recommend is at least unlocking Dwarven smithing, as it is the best option for armor upgrading compared to the other smithing types, and depending on your vocation, it also is very likely to be your best weapon upgrading if you're not like a magick main. It's well worth doing. To do it though, you'll need to come here to the Windwalker's home, which is just south of Back Batal. Originally, you'll have to go around this route and pass through this cave, and on the route you'll find a dwarf that needs just some wild plants, 3 of them, to help his back. Do that and meet him at his house across the water, agree to escort him to the nearby town and bring him to the springs. And with that, the partner of the dwarf, a magic archer, will really appreciate what you've done and give you the magic archer vocation. The dwarf will even offer his services from then on, so at that point you can return to the house, the Windwalker's home, and speak with the dwarf. And from there, that's how you do dwarven smithing. Finally, there is one last thing that I think you want to be aware of and prepared before you go in, and that is the Wyrmslife crystals. You're going to need an ungodly amount of these to get what's waiting for you in the Unmoored world. The vendors are going to upgrade in there, right? Currently, in the normal game, you can take Wyrmslife crystals and speak with the Dragon Forged. With these, you can enhance your gear to a 4th level. On a weapon, it'll half the weight of that weapon, which is insane, as well as greatly enhance the stats of these items. But in the Unmoored world, the Dragon Forge gets updated. Now you can buy a full set of endgame gear and even a new, even better weapon. The weapons will cost 110 Wyrmslife crystals, whereas a full endgame set of armor will cost 120. That's 230 for the weapon and full armor set, as well as potential gold to, enhance. So having a nice stock of Wyrmslife crystals is a good idea going in. You will get lots of them in there, to be fair, but I would at least say try to have around 110 so that you can immediately buy the endgame weapon to make the Unmoored world a lot easier. You get these crystals by killing and looting drakes most of all. I've got a whole guide on this topic on the channel right now, but in short, it means go hunt some drakes, make sure you're killing them when you see them, and have as much stock of these crystals as you can going into the Unmoored world. But for now, those are all the main tips and details that I think you need to know before you go into the true endgame to make that experience as smooth as possible. Because the saves are very limited once you're in there, it's kind of a major turning point where there's no going back. I think that's probably what a lot of people are having issues with. They're pushing the main story without thinking, they're going into this true endgame without being aware of the consequences of that, and they're going maybe too early where their equipment's too low level, they don't have the teleport set up, they can't save everyone, and it becomes a complete mess. Obviously, we're going to have a full guide to the Unmoored world and everything you need to do and in what order and all the advice we have for that coming on the channel soon. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.